Hey to everyone out there in YouTube land. This is Thibert, 35-year comic book veteran, coming to you live from my studio, Hack Shack Studios here in California. Lovely California. The weather has been amazing here. So this is my drill. You guys. If you're in the chat and you are listening, please chime in. It's the only way I know you're out there and that this whole little thing worked. Yeah, I never know if I'm pushing the right buttons or not. But I do know I am hitting some heavy competition today because I think Ethan Van Sciver and Mike S. Miller are live right now. So you guys are probably all listening. You're probably all over there hanging out. Well, what we are going to do today, I haven't done this in a while, so this would be a lot of fun. I know usually I hard sell this with some kind of clickbaity, hardcore. I'm going to beat down somebody. I'm going to hurt them really bad with this portfolio review. But that is not what we really do here. We have a lot of fun, and I try to pass on some knowledge that I've accumulated over the 35 years doing comic books. So if you guys are in the chat, please let me know. Chime in. I know some of you are probably contrary and like, no, I'm not going to. I'm not going to type anything in for you, little mister. Just because you tell me to do something, that doesn't mean I'm going to do it. Well, it would help. Okay, so I have everything set up. And this is an interesting little backstory on this piece that I received months and months ago, maybe even a year ago. It's Ray Ace, how do you say his? Acevedo. And I did a Kickstarter for my Oodles of Doodles and other stuff too art book, and one of the tiers in the Kickstarter was to buy blue lines, and I had a little instructional video that came with it, and you could ink a piece of mine, a piece of artwork that I had drawn up. So I blue line the pencils and I sent them out. Hey, Sticky Wicket, thank you, man. This thing must be on a major delay. We're live. Had to leave EVS's stream. Well, thank you, Sticky Wicket. I hope this is worth it. And is that Ray the Ace? That's you. Finally, huh? I finally got around to you, man. So I've had it on my desktop, your piece of artwork, forever, and I've been meaning to do this, but with Taylor leaving, I had to learn all of this YouTube stuff myself, and then trying to wrap up all the black and white stuff pretty much myself with my wife's help, and then trying to launch a new campaign, which is going to come out soon, which is Chrono Mechanics. So whenever I see your faces in the chat, it always makes me feel better. So yes, Ray, that is what this episode is going to be. And I just wanted to explain the whole title and everything. That's just clickbaity. I'm not really going to beat you down. I'm not going to hurt you. Actually, your artwork is pretty good. Maybe I shouldn't have said that yet. Maybe I should have went over it all. So I understand you're busy. Yeah, and thank you so much for backing that. I do believe it was for the Kickstarter art book that you did the Blue Line Pro. Well, I don't think it was called Blue Line Pro. It was just ink blue lines and get a critique or something like that. So anyways, here it is, man. Let's destroy Ray. Let's do it. Okay, so let's do this. Okay, so I click this, and then I click this, and wait, it didn't work. Okay, let's go back. Share. Am I sharing? Let's see if this is sharing. Yeah, I think this is sharing now. So you should see a big bright yellow image with my face in red. So that's how it all begins, right? So I thought I would start with the pencils first. So these are the pencils that Ray got. So I did these, I believe, as a commission. So this was a commission, And so what I did is I blue lined these pencils up and then sent them along to Ray. And I hope the instructional video that I made was good. I mostly covered line weights, I believe, and how to establish depth with thickness and like with the thinner lines as well. So basically your backgrounds are the thinnest lines, your midground is the middle line weight, and the foreground is the thickest line weight. So that's roughly the easiest way to explain how line weights work, just as far as establishing depth. Then there's a lot of line weight discussions that we'll get into as far as lighting and kind of weighting down your figures with line weight, kind of giving it some sense of weight and gravity. So we'll get into that as well. So those are the pencils. So if anybody's coming in late, we are going to do an ink review of Ray, I think it's Aciovato, his inks. So these are the pencils that he started with. And you know what? I'm going to get right into his after this. Okay, so this is Ray's work. And Ray, you knocked it out of the ballpark. I'm doing this just because I said I was going to do it. I don't really have too much to say. This is really good. So I just wanted to start with that. I know it's probably boring starting with that, but that's how I feel. So I think, hey, and Ray, let me know what you inked this with. It will help me review it. So if you inked it with a crow quill, kind of like a Hunt 102, a dip pen, or markers, or a brush. I'm not really sure. It looks like pen to me, but I'm not a real good judge of these things. So let's blow it up a little bit so you can see the quality. This is a pretty good scan, so it should hold up under this kind of scrutiny. So yeah, not bad. I'm going to go back to the chat and see if Ray answered what he used. What did you use? I used the tools you sent. Oh, cool. So he did use the 102 Hunt, and I believe there was a brush in there as well. So there was a nice Winsor Newton Series 7. I believe it was a number 2 watercolor brush. And so the pen was a Hunt 102 dip pen or crow quill. And I believe I sent him, it was Pelican ink, which is what I use. It's the best ink. It's the least hassle, I think. So as far as just putting it in your inkwell and using it without, mixing it with other inks, or without letting it, sit out for a little bit so it can thicken up and all those other things. It's the best overall ink, just kind of, dip and go kind of ink. So I used to mix inks, and I used to be a lot more fussy with it. But as I get older, I just kind of want to do the work. I just want to get in and get out. I don't want to spend a lot of time mixing and stuff like that. So if you don't know, there's several things that inkers do. So some of them will, they'll mix inks. So what I used to do is if the ink would get thick, like I think I always use as a base, I use Pelican because I always liked it. Higgins is good for like watercolor wash, more transparent type of ink. It's a little bit more runny. It's not as thick. But there was a Higgins 1000, I think. And sometimes I would mix that. Hold on, I'm going to drink some water. I'm getting a little dry here. I would mix that with my Pelican, especially when the Pelican started getting thick. One thing that some inkers do is they'll mix their ink with water. I never do that. I don't like that. It waters down the ink. And The only time I water down the ink is if I'm doing ink wash. If I'm going to ink like something like this that you're looking at, I never dilute the ink up. I'll thin it out with, like I said, like Higgins, that 1000, and that's about it. I think I did a couple times. I tried water, but it thins it out, and it doesn't mix very well with the ink, and it just becomes kind of a mess. So it becomes a little fussy. Some people do it, and that's good for them, but I never had a lot of success with it, so I never liked it. So there's that. And then some people will mix, God, what was it? It was like the rapidograph ink. They would mix whatever their ink of choice was. So mine was always Pelican, and then they would mix, what was it? It's I know it has a name. I haven't used it in years, but it's the ink that they use in rapidographs. And that's kind of I'm thinking the right stuff. I think it has acrylic in it, so it's a little shinier. So some inkers ink for the originals for artwork cells, so they try to make the artwork look as pretty as they can. So they use that shinier ink, so it's a little bit more impressive as a presentation for the original page. So there's a lot of different things that people do, different inkers do, as far as their ink and mixing and stuff like that. But like I said, I think that for me, Pelican is the best right out of the bottle. It usually works exactly the way I want it to. It flows really well. And that's what you're looking for. You're looking for an ink that flows really well for you. And then when the ink does get a little thick and it's not flowing as well, I just add a couple squirts of Pelican back into the bottle, and it usually will refresh it and thin it up just enough. So if you have your inkwell open for a long period of time, what will happen is the ink will start drying in the inkwell, so it will thicken up. So you kind of want to gauge while you're inking. So if you're having a flow problem, meaning if your ink isn't coming through the nib very well, and it's kind of scratchy, and it's not, I don't know how else to describe it, it's just not flowing properly, just put a couple more squirts of ink in there, and it should do the trick. And hot days, it'll dry quicker. So during the summer months, your ink will dry faster. So you'll probably be adding ink a lot more often in the summer months. In the rest of the months, it's usually pretty good. I know people that live where there's humidity, a lot of humidity, sometimes have bleeding problems, but that's more of a paper issue than ink. So I would imagine whenever I have humidity problems here in California, I usually close the house up, even though it might be a little like the weather might, or that might be a little uncomfortable, but it works better. And if you're in a place, a region that has a lot of humidity, I don't know this for sure, but like I said, here, what I'll do is I'll close up the house. I'll just kind of run a fan, and I'll I'll work with thicker ink, because thicker ink won't bleed as much. So if you're having a bleeding problem with the paper, thicker ink sometimes can be the solution. So that's kind of the opposite of what I was telling you earlier. But ink, it's real temperamental, so it works differently with different climates and different weather conditions. So always be aware of that. And then as far as paper as well, always use the best paper you can get your hands on. The Strathmore, was it hot press? Is it cold press? Whichever is the smooth. I always get confused because I don't really get into that anymore. I just use either I have a bunch of image paper here, or I use the DC board. So I don't really go to the store and buy any paper anymore, even though I'm probably going to need to do that soon. So I'm going to have to figure that. But I think it's this. Well, I know it's the smooth, but I'm not sure if it's hot or cold press. So you'll just have to see when you go to the store which one looks smoother, because you can definitely tell. I don't like the more textured paper. I like the smoother paper. The textured paper is good if you're doing a lot of dry brush and things like that, but I don't really care for it. Most of the stuff now is pretty slick and smooth, so you don't want to use that. So yeah, don't skip on paper. And I'm going to give you a heads up, and this breaks my heart whenever I do portfolio reviews at conventions and things like that. When inkers come up and show me their work, it was called Blue Line Pro, and I slipped up earlier when I said that. And the reason is it always sticks in my head because I don't know if they got their act together, but the early stuff, the first couple years that they were doing, putting that stuff out, that paper was horrible. It was absolutely horrible. And you would think, it's called Blue Line Pro, and it has the blue lines out there, and it looks like it's comic book standards, industry standards, but it's not. I don't know if they, like I said, I don't want to blast them because they might have got their act together and got better paper. But the reason I'm saying it is because there's a lot of you out there that buy this paper and think that it's going to be good because it says Blue Line Pro, and you think it's industry standards. Sometimes it's not. A lot of times it's not. So the Strathmore, like I said, that's a good brand. Let me see. I don't have any here. Yeah, just like the Strathmore Bristol. The Strathmore Bristol is always the best. It's pretty good, just over the, I guess, counter kind of paper to use. So I can't stress that enough, because what happens is sometimes you guys get this paper, you bring it to people like myself at conventions, and it bleeds and it looks really bad. It looks really bad. And the problem being is you can't critique it, because you don't know how much of it is a lack of understanding how to ink and how to move the tools around, or how much of it is the actual paper itself. So what I started doing, because I started seeing some guys that looked like they were fairly competent, but it looked worse. Like the page looked worse than it actually was. So what I started doing when I started critiquing is, then there's anybody out there that critiques as well, do this, because it'll help you be more fair with the critique. Ask them if you can flip the board over and then just get your nib, dip it in your ink, and then just throw a couple lines down there, and you'll know instantly if it's good paper or not. And so that Blue Line Pro, when I'd flip it over and I would do it, just ink on the back of the board, man, it bled like crazy. So as soon as it did that, I knew these guys were way better inkers than what I was seeing here, because the paper just wasn't allowing them to shine. And so that's why I stress the paper, you guys, because you don't want to do all that work. You don't want to commit all that time and energy and then get in front of a comic professional thinking it's good paper, and then thinking that, like, kind of beating down on yourself a little bit, thinking that it's you. And then the artist, if they don't know it's the paper, they're going to review you based on what you show them. And they're going to be pretty harsh. They're going to look at it and just go, they're going to shake their head and go, you're not there yet. So make sure you have good paper. I think I sent Ray like Supreme DC, not DC, but image board. That stuff is really, really thick, and it's really smooth, and it's really good paper. So I think I sent that along because I wanted to give him the most perfect working conditions that you could possibly have. So that's my advice to all newbie inkers out there. Make sure you have ink that flows. And for all of us, it's different. So everybody uses different stuff. So, what one might recommend, another might hate. So you have to try a lot of different inks to see what fits you and what fits whatever style you want to work in. And then the main thing is good paper. Make sure you get good paper. Okay, so having said that, I've set all this up. So let me give you one more scan of Ray's work here, which, as you can see, is really competent. So Ray had all the professional tools, professional paper, and professional pencils to work over. Also, if you guys are doing samples, try to get professional pencils to ink over, because if you're inking your friends, that's fine. But when you're inking, a lot of their mistakes become your mistakes. So when somebody's reviewing your work, they might not be able to get past the penciler's mistakes, and then you'll get lumped into there as well. So always try to get professional pencilers' work as much as you can. Ink your friends, ink people like that, but I wouldn't, unless they're really, really good, I wouldn't show another professional as far as a portfolio review or anything like that. I would only show them your inks over other professionals' pencils. So here we are. I think I've been kind of procrastinating on this because it is really good, and it's going to be a fairly lousy review because I can't find a ton of things wrong with it. So it's going to make Ray very happy, but it's going to make for a very bad show. Okay, so I think overall what I see with Ray's work is a lack of and this will come in time. So, and this is really, really big, you guys. I'm blowing this up really huge. So work like this will never be scrutinized to this degree. But I need to show you is some of it could be the scan. So I'm not sure what this is actually, what it was scanned at. But there is some flow problem. And it's mostly, some of it's in the outline, but some of it, well, a lot of it is in the hatching. So hatching is always the tricky part, because hatching is a quick fluid movement. And if you can't really move the nib in a quick fluid movement, you have inconsistencies or just a dirty line. So what I see mainly with your work, Ray, is a confidence. So you're not putting the line down with a lot of confidence. And the only reason I can say this and talk to you this way is because this is really good. If your work wasn't this good, I couldn't talk to you this way. So just know when I say confidence, I'm talking to you like another professional would talk to you, because this is really good. And the confidence is only going to come with a dig down. You have to believe in yourself and go, yes, you can't hesitate. You have to commit to the line, because one of the things at Hack Studios, I don't know if you know this, it was mainly known as an ink studio. We're publishing books now and putting IPs together at the studio now. But for a long time, it was known as an ink studio. So I would take a lot of up and comers and work with them one-on-one and train them so that eventually, they could step up and start assisting me on books. So some past people were, Danny Mickey, Trevor Scott, Jaime Mendoza, who I think is inking some of the Batman books right now. Just to name a few, there's a lot of other guys. So I've trained and worked with a lot of really big name pros that later, had prominence and are contributing and have major voices in the industry right now. So when I say these things, I'm just saying that not so much as as trying to name drop, but just to show you that I have worked with some good people and that they've gone on. So I guess proof is in the pudding type of thing. So yeah, the pencils were really, really tight. So you stayed on them really, really close. So so your interpretation is really pretty good. I'm going to go back to my pencils and see. Okay, let me move these over. These are, I guess I should have darkened them, but you can see kind of around her mask, Harley Quinn's mask. The shapes are a lot more rounded. They're a lot more fluid. And when I ink them, I have my inks here too. I'm going to show you those later though, because I didn't want to kind of steal your thunder here, Ray. So you can see kind of the roundness and these shapes around her domino mask, and there's a lot more flow. And when I inked it, there was a lot more flow too. And then when we go back to Ray's, you can see choppiness, angles. There's not a lot of, like, there are round shapes, but they get kind of angular and choppy in places. And once again, I mean, the resolution isn't that good because I've blown this up to a crazy degree, but you can kind of see it. Let me get my tool out here so I can kind of indicate what I'm talking about. So like right here, it needs to be rounder. So I even kind of did it a little less round. So more rounded here. There's a little angle here. We get angular here. This is really nice right in here. Oh, my Photoshop is it's delaying. My goodness. I don't like technology. There's a little bit, yeah, there's a delay. There's a little bit of an angle here as well. So there's an angle here. So you can kind of see where I'm going. So when you're inking, you need to get a rhythm and flow. So those round shapes need to be round. The angular shapes need to be angular. So those are some of the things that I see with just like the not staying true to the shape. And one of I'll show you. I'm going to do it with her shoulder. I'll show you kind of the phone's ringing downstairs. It's probably my wife. Is how to ink. Let's just say like this black line right here is the pencil line. So when you ink, and I'm not saying you do this, Ray, because I can't really see it, and I didn't notice it, but you want to ink on the outside of the line. So you build in this direction. Okay, so then I'm going to show you kind of the wrong way to do it, and then I'll explain why. Okay, so if you ink on this side of the line and you build that line out, what you have the potential to do is you have the potential to change the shape and the structure of what you're inking. So when you ink a line and you build a line, what I mean by building the line is making it thicker. So you put down your main line and then you build that ink line up. And when you build it, always build it on this side. So build it on the outside. Never build the line on the inside of the structure, because when you build on the inside of the structure, you will change the structure's integrity. So you'll make the shoulder smaller, or where it really shows is in little details like the mouth or in the eyes, because I'll show you in the eyes. Let's say, and I'm not saying you did this again, Ray. These are just examples. Is if you follow the line and then you build this way, the integrity of the eye is there. The opening, the width of this eye will always be the same. So when you go and let's say you're building on the inside of the line, you close the eye, you change the eye shape. So if you do this, you're changing the integrity of the shape of the eye. So one thing, if you do make this a mistake like this, there is whiteout. So get yourself a good whiteout pen and then just come in and white it out and then do it again. That's the best way to do it. And what I used to do, I don't do it anymore. Well, mainly I don't do it anymore is because I don't have to, because a lot of the work is sent to me, so I have it as a file, so I can refer back to the file if I have a problem. But I used to make Xerox copies of all the pencils before I would start inking them. So if you do make a mistake like that then you can always look back at the pencils. So if you have to kind of, white it out and then rework it, then you'll know what the original looked like. Because once you have inked over it and once you've done whiteout, you can't see the penciler's line anymore. And so you got to try to bring it back to the best place, or like the original place it was, the best you can. So it's never a good thing to do that, you guys, especially on eyes. And trust me, pencilers get crazy if you reinterpret faces, and rightly so, because one of the main ways pencilers in the comic industry express themselves is in their faces. So that's how you can really tell one penciler from another. So I'm going to go over some of this structure here, this outline structure, and show you how to, I hope you can see that. So this has more of a flow to it than this did. So it kind of gets weird right in here. So you probably want to smooth it out a little bit like that. So some of the stuff I see here is just, these are kind of interpretive structure stuff, is build out this way. And so one of the things that we always try to do as inkers, here's the line weight explanation. Let me see if I can, doggone it, is you want a thinner line on top and a thicker line on the side. And then let me see if I can find a place that I can show you. This isn't optimal, but I'm going to pull this back and see if I can find something better. Actually, you did it here pretty well. It's just the transition, and it could be a confidence thing too. With this, I got to find my red tool here. My red color is right in here. There's a little bit of a transition problem. It doesn't flow real well. But let me get back into where I was going with the thickness. So Ray's got a nice thin right in here. Let me go back right in here. And then it gets a little too thick right in here. And it gets a little out of control right here. So right here is where it should start getting thicker. And then down in here with the line weight you have is perfect. So you start off good and you end good, but your transition is a little rough. So let me see if I can find the right tool, and hopefully you can see this. So right here, this is one thing I see the most in your work, Ray, is like the transitional aspects. From one line weight to another. Sometimes it's a little too abrupt, but it usually is very appropriate. It's usually the right line work or line weight. Let me see. And then one thing to keep in mind, see this, it's hard to show you where I'm at. Let me see if I can cue you in. Like right here, especially right here, there's the line gets too thin. So what you want to do is, I call it inking through. So I wish I could just use my finger. to show you. But inking through is kind of like this. So her arm goes all the way through this little wrist bob or whatever the heck those are, her little clown wrist. I'm sure those things have a name. So you have to kind of think through the image when you ink. So a lot of new inkers I've noticed that right at the tip here, they taper it too much. So it tapers like it's going to, like it ends right there, but it doesn't end right there. It keeps inking or going through. So one thing you want to do is make sure you put a solid line here as if you're inking through. So don't taper it like it ends right here. Ink it through like you're inking through the object, so you can keep that line weight consistent. So then the structure, you can see already, I'll go back. You can see the structure is a little stronger than if we go back to your line there. So it starts losing solidity and structure. So the lower part of the arm is really good, but it tapers a little bit too much right there. And then this other side does the same. So you want to kind of thicken it up. And also you have it correct, but see how when I exaggerated it more, it gives the arm, like, the one side's thinner and the other side's thicker. So where the light is hitting the top part of the arm, it's thicker or thinner. And where the light isn't on the bottom part where I just inked, it gets a little thicker. So always think your top lines are thinner and the lower lines are thicker. So always just think like where the light hits, the top parts of things, it's going to be thinner. Where it doesn't hit and there's a shadow, go thicker. Because if you do that, then you kind of, which is where I started, you bring a gravity to it. You bring weight to the figure. You bring solidity to it. So let me go back, take my line away, and then you can kind of get an idea of what it is. So you can kind of see what I'm talking about. So, like I said, if these inks weren't as good as they are, I probably wouldn't even be talking like this. So a lot of the stuff that I'm bringing up is just kind of ink lessons, more so than actual critiques. So here is another example. Even stuff like guns and things, you can bring a solidity. So one thing I like to do, and whether they're in the pencils or not, is bring like weight, like more weight to things. So you can see how right here, I'm going to do it with the black, it kind of is the same thickness all the way around, but then I added right in here it thicker. So what that is it's casting a little bit of a shadow, and it's not, I didn't do it all the way out like this, because if I did it like that, it wouldn't be a shadow anymore. It looks like it would be structure. So by taking the line I just inked away, you can see this is still the structure, and then this is a shadow. So we have the top line weight of the gun here. So here's something else you can do, even with just straight lines, is bring a thicker line. So by doing those two things, you can see it's bringing more weight and solidity to the gun. So I'll take those lines away, and so we can see a before, after. So you can see the solidity of the gun. It has more impact. So that's kind of what I was saying about confidence too. Sometimes it's an unsureness in the line and just an unwillingness to commit. So here is one of those examples too. So you can thicken the line, the bottom line, and then this has a shadow like what I showed you with the other piece there. So that faces are pretty good. I'm going to try to wrap this up, and I'm going to get into the hatching. So with her little frill thing here too, there's an inconsistency. Some of these line weights get a little too thick right here on the bottom part. So where the thickness should be is probably here where it's casting shadow. So like here on the other one here, I don't know, it might be a little too thick. So think about those as like it's inset and it would be casting shadow. Okay, so the hatching here, hatching is always tough. So one thing is how you can really tell like somebody who's pretty good but still starting out is in your hatch progressions here. So it starts off pretty good and then it starts kind of falling apart in here. So it doesn't follow an organic natural progression. So this one right here, let me see, this hatch right here is a little too thick. And then this one that follows it is too thin. So they should keep getting thicker as they go, but they should follow a progression of thin to thick. And so one of the ways I have figured out how to do this is I always start from the thinnest line. Because I remember when I was starting off, I was like, do you start from the thick and then build out? Or do you start from the thin? So I started getting more comfortable with the thin, and I'll tell you why. Is when you put that first line down with a thin progression, always think it's the thinnest that you can possibly go. So overcompensate with it. Go really, really thin. So just kind of put down the bare minimum line or minimal line, and then the next one push down a little harder, push down a little harder as you go back. It's easier to track it with a thin than a thick, because sometimes if you're starting with the thick, you can start off way too thick and then you get yourself into a bind. You get yourself into a bind, which is kind of what's happening here, where this line here, the furthest one out, should be the thinnest. It's almost as thick as all these other ones. So this should just be a hairline thickness, and then build it as it goes back. So always think your first hatch should be your thinnest, especially if it's progressing like this. If it's kind of these type of hatches, these pullouts into the black, Ray did the right thing where it's thin here and then it gets thicker, but it needs to, here, I'm going to bleed it or zoom in. It needs to get thicker right at the ends because it needs to progress into the black more. So it needs to fade into the black a little bit more. So the transition should be a little bit quicker from thin at the tip here to thick at the end. And also here is another tip, is there's a spacing problem right between these two. So your thickness is good, your thin to thick, as far as your progression this way. Hey, my wife brought in food. What is that?
It's a hamburger from Costco.
Oh, okay. So yeah, so there's a major space between these two lines right here. So always be careful with that. The best thing you can do is when you start hatching, get into a rhythm. So try not to stop. So go from thin and then build it back to thick. And go, once you start one, just keep doing them at the same pace. Don't stop and start, because if you can do that, your rhythm, you'll find a rhythm, and then your spacing will happen more organically. I hope that's a little, I can't really show you that. So that's more of just like advice. It's more of just spoken than I can show you. So yeah, so there's an overall, like some of your lines, I think they could be a little bit thicker underneath some of these items or some of these structures, like here, you know, here. So stuff like that, just little inconsistencies. The faces, you stayed really close to the faces. There's still a little bit of choppiness, but you pretty much nailed it. Hair is interesting because it really has to flow. So usually where you see some inkers have a problem, kind of with the domino mask with those circles, is the hair, because the hair really needs to have those round flowing shapes. So there is some hesitation and some inconsistency with the flow of the hair and everything. So that's kind of it. And just as far as these little dots with the bats and stuff, just experiment with a toothbrush. Just get a toothbrush, put a little bit of ink on it, get your thumb, and just pss, 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 and just work it back and forth across the bristles, and you'll get more of an organic spatter than this. This looks like you actually labored and inked all that stuff by hand. So it's not a bad look if that's what you're going for, but I think this should be a little bit more organic with spattering. So yeah, the weakest part of your work right now is confidence and your hatching. Your hatching has a lot of inconsistencies to it, and thick to thin issues, but everything else looks really good. I say you're real close, Ray. You're really, really close to professional status. Just keep inking your butt off and do not get discouraged. Yeah, don't get discouraged, because you're really close. You're really close. I've seen people come into Hack Shack Studios with less talent and come out, being professional. So I think you definitely have potential here. So let me show you real quick as a parting, not that, I jumped the gun. Oh, here we go. So here's mine. So I'm going to show you, and I'm not doing this, I'm showing this more to what I mean by confidence. So you can see the round shapes, in her domino mask. Actually, there is a little bit of an angle here and here. So, and there is an angle there. So, but it's still, there's enough roundness here that, it looks more structured than the version you did. Wow, you stayed pretty darn close to this, man. Did you have the inks? Maybe I penciled it really tight. So yeah, so you can see a little bit of the difference between, and most of it overall is just confidence. Let me find Ray's. See if I can match the size. So most of it is just, it's just confidence. So where is mine? Those are pencils. I think this is it here. So between the two, that, you know what? I'm going to get rid of that so I don't hit it again. I'm getting confused. Okay, it's the first two. Boom. Let me blow this up a little. And then boom. So you can kind of see a little bit of the confidence. So it's a little bit more solid and a little bit more flowing. my line. And like I said, I'm not doing this to like, ooh, look how much better I am. I'm doing it just to kind of show you what I've been talking about, just the flow and the confidence of putting the line down. So let's check out the Joker here. And my gardeners my neighbors' gardeners are running amok now. So there's Ray's, and then there's mine. So you can kind of see a little bit more of the confidence problem, the confidence stuff that I'm doing. I'm losing my train of thought here. So yeah, so there's that, and then Ray's. So I do believe some of this is scanning too. So I wish I had a better scan, but you can still kind of see some of the hesitations and the flow or confidence stuff going on there. And so there's that one. Here's Ray's. So very, very good, Ray. You killed it, man. This is very, very good. You have a future, my friend. Don't get discouraged and keep practicing. Practice, practice, practice all the time. So I hope you enjoy what you're doing, because that will help when you spend all the hours drawing and inking. It'll keep you sane. So thank you so much, Ray. And then here is just like a finish. This is just a little, with color, how, you saw the pencils, inks, and then the colors. So if you guys are into collecting prints, I think my website is in the description. I sell these. So here's the color work. I think Thomas Mason did the color work here. Thomas did a pretty darn good job there. So thank you guys so much. I am going to stop sharing. I'm going to go over to the chat, and let me see. I'm going to go back a little bit, and then I'm going to go eat some lunch. So we have Nighthawk Warrior. Hey, Nighthawk, how are you? We have Pablo Romero Art. Hello, how are you? Let's get back to Ray. I didn't like the Blue Line Pro. Yeah. So thanks for backing me there. It bleeds a lot. So was that the newer stuff? When was the last time you used Blue Line Pro? Ray, if you're still in the chat, let me know real quick, and then I'll end it on that. So this was my first full piece inked. Really? With the Crow Quill? Holy crap. Yes, my confidence with the Crow Quill was very low. Wow, dude. I'm impressed, my friend. Found hatching with the Crow Quill very difficult. Well, you did a killer job, my friend. If this is your first job with the Crow Quill, you did an amazing job. It's really close. Yeah, it is. I think I ruined the scan when I was trying not to grab the blue line. Yeah, sometimes when you try to take the blue line from the ink, sometimes it can cause problems. About a year ago. So then Blue Line Pro is still pretty bad paper if it was a year ago. So yeah, you guys, I know it's tempting and it's readily available, and it seems like it's good. It's good paper because it says Blue Line Pro. It's not pro. It's not professional standards. It's not industry standards. You're better off getting Strathmore Bristol and get the, I want to say it's the cold press. I don't know. It's the smooth paper. So get the smooth paper. So thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. Thank you, Ray, for sending the artwork. I want to do more of these, but like I said, I'm taking over some of these duties from Taylor. So I'm still trying to figure out how and where everything is. So I believe I still have some artwork saved to do more of these reviews. If you guys like these reviews, please like and subscribe to the channel. Hit the bell for notifications. YouTube is being a little weird these days, so sometimes the notifications don't go through, and they're definitely trying to get rid of some of the smaller peoples like myself. So it's harder and harder to get the word out. So please, you guys, if you like this kind of content, spread it around. Let your friends know. This is all grassroots. This is all ground level stuff, man. This indie thing is all word of mouth. So whatever you guys can do to help out, I am so grateful for it. So Alpha Proto, what is that? Peace. Arrow, I can't see that last. It's too small for my old eyes. So, well, thank you, Proto. So, thanks again, you guys. Had a blast doing this. Ray, you have a career. Don't lose faith. Keep working your butt off. Right now, Ray, you need to buckle down, man. You need to work harder. So, all the time that you spent to get to this point, it's nothing. It is nothing, my friend. You need to ink your ass off because it's the only way that confidence part is going to happen. And like when you ink those hatches and stuff, it has to be intuitive, man. You cannot think too much about it when you're doing it. I talk about it this way, and this is going to be my pearl of wisdom. This is going to be my parting shot. Thank you, Sticky Wicked. Sticky Wicked. I really appreciate Grace Masters class art. Thank you so much, and thank you for choosing me over the competition because I don't know, those guys put some pretty cool YouTube content out there. I'm talking about Ethan and Mike S. Miller. So yeah, the thing is, inking is performance art. So I'm a musician. I played in rock bands. So I used to play nightclubs and stuff like that all the time when I was younger. And the thing is, when you're playing, you got to be in the moment. You have to be in the moment. You can't get in, your head cannot get in the way. So that's where the rehearsals and the practice and all that stuff comes. So when you're playing that, you just have to be in the moment because it's a performance. It's a performance. You don't get to erase it. You don't get to do another take. You don't get to do all those things like when you're studio or when you're writing or when you're creating the song. You don't get to do that. And so when you're inking, it's kind of like it's your performance. So I'm a drummer. So when I'm drumming, you can't think about the song. You can't think about where you're at. You can't think about anything. You just have to be in the moment because as soon as you think about it, you're going to screw it up. As soon as your head gets in the way, you're going to screw it up because you have to be in that moment. Inking is a performance art. I'm going to copyright this, you guys, because I've never heard anybody explain anything like this. I used to think inking was like penciling or writing. I thought it was a process. It is not a process, you guys. Inking is a performance art. When you write, writing is writing and rewriting. That's what it is. It's constantly writing a draft, reading it, tweaking it, rewriting it. When you're penciling, why do you think there's an eraser? There's an eraser there. So you draw, you erase. You draw, you erase. You're trying to find the line. You're trying to find the form. You're trying to look for something. It's a process. Inking is not a process. It is a performance. So when you throw that line down for right, wrong, indifferent, that's the performance. So if you go out and you drop your drumsticks, that's the performance for that evening. When you're a singer and you're going out and your voice cracks or you forget the lyrics, that's the performance for that evening. When you ink, that's the performance. You can go in and white it out, but trust me, it's never going to be as good. You kind of have to nail it the first time. And the only way I can describe that is you have to not be in your head. You have to kind of turn that stuff off and just go with it. And that's where the practice and the rehearsing comes in. Do it and do it over and over again. Till it becomes second nature. Because if you think while you're inking, you're done. You're done. It's going to be horrible. So that's my parting shot. That's my pearl of wisdom. Here's my banner. Let's see if it shows up. I have a Indiegogo that I'm going to be putting up soon. It's probably going to be next week that Chrono Mechanics is going to go live. But in the meantime, I have an Indiegogo pre-launch page. So if you sign up now, it's going to help out when I go live because I can let you guys know and you can get in there early. And the reason you want to get in there early is because there's going to be a lot of exclusives. So there's going to be exclusives there. Some of them will only be for the signups. So the people that signed up will have access to those exclusives. And some of those exclusives are just going to be like, maybe 25 or 50. So they're going to go fast. So the thing is, you guys got to get in there early. And also by getting in there early, I'll be so gracious because grateful for it, because it helps the algorithm with Indiegogo. So it helps us get noticed and helps get the word out there quickly. So I appreciate if you know somebody that likes good fun action adventure. Chrono Mechanics is their time travel repairman, and it's kind of along the lines of the sensibilities, kind of like H.G. Wells meets Looney Tunes, So it's a lot of fun. It's over the top, and I'm drawing and inking it in a style that's completely different than anything I've ever done before. So the style I'm very proud of. I've created, I think, a fairly unique look for the book, and I haven't seen anything that looks quite like it. So please, if you like my work and you want to support what I do and help keep me in this this indie arena, which is where I want to be, please support it, and you won't be sorry. It's a really, really nice book. I'm putting my heart and soul into it. I have some help on this one artistically. I have Render Contender that is going to be he's not ghost penciling. He's going to be doing some breakdowns for me. So I'll be doing finishes over his breakdowns. And I think he's got 3 pages. I've inked 1 page. If you go back in the YouTube library, there is one, I think it's a 2-part where I ink a page over Render Contender's pencils. So that's a lot of fun. So you should check that out, like that if you do like it. I don't want to tell you what to do, but yeah, that's my plug. That's my little shameless plug part of the show. So I hope you really enjoyed this. Have yourselves a great day. I'm going to go back real quick to the comments. And well said, copyright that make t-shirts. Yes, t-shirts. That's my next big way to take over the world. T-shirts. So thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Take care and talk to you soon.